Hey folks, today we're looking at a G1 Sideswipe who has lost his wheel. And this is a very common failure mode for those 84, 85 cars. The wheels are pinned into the axle shaft, all using the same design. And I'll show you how to reattach it so that it functions exactly the same way as it did when you first got the toy. This particular example is a 1985 release, even though he was a 1984 cast member. While we're doing this repair, we'll also take the opportunity to show you how to tighten joints in general, because it's basically the same technique. And we'll also disassemble the top half of the toy because Sideswipe has a more common failure mode. It doesn't happen to be present on this example, but in order to address it, you'll need to disassemble the top half. So I'll show you how to do that. Taking a closer look at what holds the wheel onto the toy, it's the knurled end of this metal pin. So the pin has texture on the end, and when that is driven into the shaft of the axle, it grabs onto the inner wall, the plastic inner wall, preventing the wheel from coming off. This is really common among the cars when it comes to wheels, but it's also very common for joint pins. You'll see them in necks and shoulders and knees, and when you have to remove them, the way you would do that is with a pin pusher tool. This is the one that I personally use for repairing toys and also adjusting watch bracelets. So that's a way to overcome the friction of the knurled end of the pin without cracking the toy. So let's see what we're dealing with. The inner wall of the axle shaft has completely failed on this toy. So when I try to stick the pin back in there and get the wheel reattached, you'll see there's just no friction at all. It falls right off. The most common failure point on Sideswipe is actually his doors, or more specifically the windows. You'll often see them missing one of the windows, and the reason for that is that it's a two-piece design, and the window is attached to the door using these melted studs. This is a pinning technique that's actually common in real automotive car door panels. Another weak spot is the spoiler. These are often chipped at that corner, or else they're missing entirely. And something we'll address today is the tightening of the left elbow. It's really not that bad, but it's looser than the one on the right, and that just bothers me. So let's get Sideswipe disassembled. The first thing to do is remove this black undercarriage from under the hood area. It's just 4 screws. As you take them apart, you'll be surprised to find that there are so many layers holding this top end together. And all of this has to be removed if you want to do a part swap for a new arm or door. Now we can remove the hood, and doing that will give us a good look at the copyright stamp. And now we need to remove the head. The head is this clamshell design, and it's clamped around the front axle. So you actually cannot remove the arms without removing the head first. There's our guy. You can see that C shape of the clip. And then the last thing to do is take the front and back half of the actual torso area apart. This will also remove the roof. The angles are a little tricky here, so these front screws are not a problem, but the ones that are kind of underneath the roof do deserve some care and attention. You need to position the roof as far back as it'll go on that hinge so that you're not applying pressure to it. You don't want to have a snapped roof. But once we get this black backing off, the arms come loose. Now, if you have an arm that won't stay in, it's usually because you're missing this black gasket that's on the back end of the axle shaft. It keeps the arm centered in that cylinder, and it also prevents it from falling out. Now let's remove the forearm at the elbow so that we can come back and tighten this up later. And the forearm just slips right off of that post. Now to address the loose wheel, I'm going to use my flathead screwdriver and reach into the axle shaft and score it. I'm scratching it because I want to use clear nail polish to rebuild the inner wall. Now remember, the inner wall has already failed, right? It's already damaged, so I'm not damaging something here that was already pristine. But what I need to do is give some grooves and texture for that clear nail polish to hold onto. And then that'll serve as the new wall that the axle pin holds onto with those little barbs. Now we'll apply a dab of clear nail polish to a toothpick. The toothpick is about the right diameter to get into the axle shaft. I also like the tapered shape so you have a little bit of wiggle room to make sure every surface is coated. Then we'll apply a second dab just to make sure we've really rebuilt that inner wall. I'm not too worried if we've overdone it, like if we've over applied the polish, because we have another step where we'll address that. And while the polish is out, we're going to apply a very thin layer to the post that the elbow attaches to. This is the classic method for tightening loose joints. It works really well and the polish dries almost invisibly. If you've got a blob, remove it. You don't need a lot of material to be added. And when it dries, you can see it's barely visible. I mean, these are obviously invisible since they're covered up within the joint anyway. Now that the nail polish is dry on the inner wall of the axle shaft, we want to make sure that we didn't inadvertently plug it. And so I'm using a tool called a pin vise drill. It's a very small drill that's great for modeling projects. And this is a small diameter drill bit, just trying to make sure there's an opening all the way through that newly built cylinder wall. If it's plugged up, then when you reinsert the pin, it's just going to press against it and probably pop that clear nail polish loose, and that's not what we want. So once we've got a clear path through, I'm going to move up one size of the drill bit. It's still smaller than the axle pin, but it's just a little bit larger. I want the axle pin to fit in exactly the way it previously did. And now we're clear, so we're ready to reinsert the axle pin. I'm feeling pretty good resistance here. So I'm going to finish inserting it using the rubber tipped end of my modeling file. And it's in. So give that a test, shake it, tug on it. This is completely secure, functioning exactly as it did when new. Now we'll go back to the elbow and reattach the forearm onto the post. And you can see that it's quite a bit more snug. It's very smooth. We'll snug up the screw and the arm is finished. It's time to reassemble the torso, taking care not to apply too much stress to the roof. It's those same 4 screws as before. Now it's time to reattach the head in that clamshell design. Put his head on the right direction. And then just snug up the screw. There's a little bit of fine tuning on this particular screw because if you make it too tight, it'll be very hard to rotate his head around during transformation. You'll be able to feel it. So you just back it off a quarter turn if it's a little bit too tight. Now the hood will fit over the shoulders. And we need to reinstall that black undercarriage. These are the same 4 screws that we started off with. These are all the same size screw, so there's no worries about mixing them up. The only one that's different is the one in the back of his head.
And that should be it.
So that's G1 Sideswipe back on the road. His wheel has been reattached. This is a very common failure point for those early G1 cars. We've also tightened a joint using clear nail polish, which is a technique you can use with a lot of toys. It's practically invisible and it's very effective. And we also disassembled his entire upper body so that if you ever have to do a door swap, you'll know how to do it. So I hope this was useful information to you, and we'll see you next time.